Hey there, I'm Shy Fox. I recently painted Litten and wanted to have him breathing fire, which inspired this tutorial. So today we're gonna learn how to draw fire. I'll teach you step by step and also show you how I specifically did it for this piece. I used to find fire really difficult to draw, but I'm hoping for you guys that following these steps is gonna really simplify it for you so that you can draw fire in any shape, whether it's a typical flame shape or something more abstract. If you enjoy art tutorials such as this, be sure to like and subscribe. Now let's get into the actual process of our steps for drawing flames. Here is my finished version of Litten. You can see the flames, and in addition to the flames, we have the sparks that are around the image too. What I'm going to do is I'm going to make a completely new canvas and demonstrate. Now I find flames and fire look really good against a darker background, and usually that's the case because fire is pretty bright. It's a light source. So we're gonna pick something like black, something like a dark gray. This isn't even black. So on a new layer, I'm going to get a dark reddish orangish color picked out. So we have our dark background, and what we want to do is, for our first step, is really just sketch the general shape of our flame that we want. Now, most people would probably sketch a flame to look like, I don't know, something like that, right? Really basic. But what I want to challenge you with is fire can be a lot more interesting than that. It can take on much more abstract shapes, but it's also okay if you want to kind of do something simple like this, but I'm going to try something a little more abstract and interesting and even more realistic than that. So I'm kind of using a reference of a real flame to kind of inspire the shape for this, and that's a good little piece of advice too. And I've also included pieces that are not attached to the bulk of the flame. These are kind of like having sparks, not exactly, but those little extra pieces can also make it look kind of realistic and interesting. And I'm not gonna go overboard here. I think that's enough. So I'm gonna start with this as being my base shape, and you can even go back and kind of tweak it, add some interest to it. So maybe I'll do that, make a little gap there. We could even do something like that over here, you know, instead of just doing that. This, what we've done here, is a lot more interesting. So, and there's no hard rules that it has to be a certain shape, and I guess that's the fun part about fire. You can't really mess it up. You just kind of have to have a sense of direction. We know that the fire is sort of floating up. In different artworks, you might have fire swirling around, and that's going to be tricky in its own way, but at least it has direction. So you can paint it according to the direction that it's kind of flowing. And again, references would be helpful. So just Google like swirling flame or whatever it is you need, right? One thing you can do too is add gaps on the inside of your flame. I think this makes it look interesting as well. So I'm going to have gaps, and that'll make sense when I go to fill in the color. So on a completely new layer, because I don't want to do this over top of our sketch layer, I'm going to take you can either take a pen tool, because the reason why I do the pen tool is because it's completely opaque. There's none of this like brushy transparency. You could do it that way. Flames kind of look like that, but for this tutorial, there's a reason why we're doing it opaque. Feel free to deviate from my method and apply it and make it yours, that's fine. But for this, we're gonna use completely opaque coloring. And again, let's use a darker reddy orange color. Now, if you're me, your best friend is the lasso tool. So I like to use it to outline a shape like this, and because it doesn't have to be exact, it's pretty easy to just generally follow the idea that we have. All right, and I'm gonna hold shift and do our little blobs as well. And we can change this to remove. So we're going to remove this section and those ones. So now we have it selected. And I'm just gonna fill it in. And at this point, we also really don't need our sketch, so I'm just gonna delete the sketch layer. So this is what we have. Don't worry if it doesn't look perfect, just go with it. Fire is abstract, let it be a weird shape. So the next step is pretty easy. We're gonna duplicate this layer. So layer, duplicate, and the one that's underneath in your layers here, we wanna work with the one underneath. You're gonna go filter blur, and this Gaussian blur, and turn it up to the desired amount. I'm gonna go with about there. And so now it has this nice glow behind it. You can see if we turn the layer on and off, there's glow. And I'm also gonna tinge it slightly more red. I'm going to preserve the pixels of it. So lock transparent pixels on this blurred layer underneath, and I'm gonna go to a more bright red here and airbrush it, or I guess it doesn't matter what tool you use. Color over it to change that color. So that looks good. Step 4 is to do something very similar to step 2. We're gonna make a solid layer on the inside of our flame in a yellow. So I'm gonna find yellow, a light yellow. So take kind of like a baby yellow, a banana yellow. And you can do this by hand drawing in the inside of your flame if you want, or if you want to do my method, just take a lasso tool and you're gonna just kind of vaguely follow the general shape inside, leaving some space, and it can deviate. It doesn't have to be identical. It's probably better if it's not identical, so have some variation as you're going through it. And select the inside, and I would also deselect maybe certain areas inside as well. I suppose we could have sketched this part in, but I'm counting this as kind of coloring. So if it would help you to sketch this step as well, you could. I'm gonna fill it in, and don't forget to maybe add some white to your little flames on the exterior too. Now I've decided my yellow isn't yellow enough. It's actually too bright, so you can make adjustments to yours too if you need to. I'm going to once again use this button to lock the transparency of the pixels. I'm gonna pick a slightly more yellow and more yellow and fix that. And then from here, I'm gonna make another layer. This is gonna be your step 6. Step 5, with our transparency of our yellow layer locked, we're gonna take a white and the airbrush tool. Make sure it's not too thick brush size wise. And we're gonna go around the edges of the flame, the yellow part of the flame. We're not gonna do all of it. So some edges we're gonna leave. You get to kind of choose areas of, you know, some has the white edging and some doesn't. So we're gonna do that. So I didn't do the whole silhouette, but I did about that much. And I'd also say we can go in and vary our yellow to inside. So maybe we want some slightly darker yellow or even orangey yellow for some areas. So you can vary that. And again, just using the airbrush. You could play with brush tools too, like if you wanted to try and create brushy effects, you could. And also, because we have sections erased on the inside, we're gonna go around those sections here and give it a white silhouette a bit there too. We're gonna do something kind of similar with back to our dark orangey red. It's looking rather red right now, our dark orangey red layer, and lock. Seems that we're locking the transparency of the pixels of all these layers. So we're gonna do that again for this one. And we're gonna lighten up with an orange, a brighter orange, towards maybe the base of it here. And some variation up here. So even a bit random. I'm gonna do it to the spark bits as well. And I'm going to take a bright red and apply some of that to the tip of our flame. Certain areas look good when we have the tips of our flames be kind of bright red, so that can look good. So just play with it, see what you like. So we're just varying gradients inside of orange and red, and in the yellow area more of a yellow and white. And then at this point I'm going to add a little more glow in behind the whole thing, so make sure this layer goes underneath all the ones that we have except for the background. And airbrush again. Airbrush is our friend in this case. And take a light red, maybe even a pinky red, it's up to you, and kind of go around in behind. You can follow that silhouette a little bit and add some extra glow so you can see the difference. Now if you want to add more detail to your flame, I would suggest just going in and selecting some areas. This is kind of an optional step on a new layer above everything else, and trying to vary some of the shapes inside. So that is something you can do if you want to. So it's just an example of how you could do it. In this case, we'll keep it simpler, and we're not going to do that. I'm just going to lighten up the solid orange-red layer and lighten it up a bit more. It was just looking a little too dark to me, so I'm just going to go back and lighten some of it up. Even more of a yellowy orange in there. Just going to make it feel more warm. So final steps here. Our flame is pretty much done. We are going to add some sparks. Just like in our Litten artwork, there were sparks around the flame and around the image, so I drew those separately from drawing the flame. So we're going to do the same thing, draw the sparks separately, but they do follow a similar but simpler process to the entire flame. So take again orangey red color, and you can use lasso tool if you want to make your shapes, or you could use, you know, your pen tool. In this one I eased up a bit and actually used just a brush tool. I had a lot more transparency to them, so why don't we do that for this one too. So they almost have a fuzzy edge of their own, and I'm not going to make too many big ones. So randomly place them around. You don't want them too evenly spread or it just looks unnatural. So, you know, kind of random, some close to each other. And you're more likely to have sparks that are close to your flame. So for the most part, position your sparks, the majority of your sparks, near your flame. You can even have some more dots, just simple dots like that. So I'm going to go with that for our sparks. So step 9 is really just going to be to add some blur in behind these. You could do the whole step again where we duplicate the layer and blur behind to make that glow effect, or you can just take your airbrush, take a lighter red color again. Oh, it has to be behind though. So we need to make a layer that goes behind it and start adding it to your sparks. Your smaller sparks are probably going to be more subtle, and your large sparks are going to have a more intense glow to them, but you can play with it. And then we'll do a layer on top of everything. That's going to be yellow. And again, I'm just gonna choose to brush these in. And in this case, I don't do the yellow part to all the sparks. I really just do it to the bigger ones or the brighter ones. So we'll just do those few. I'm gonna leave you with an optional step as well for this whole thing, and this might depend on your art style. Something that can be fun is to blur some of the hard edges, or not blur, but more or less blend them, give it sort of a blend texture to it. So in order to do this, you'll actually have to unlock some of your transparent locked layer. So like with this yellow layer of the flame, I'm gonna unlock it. I'm gonna grab a blend brush and start blending where they meet. I didn't do this in the Litten project, but I'm just showing you things you could try if you wanted to like make it more, maybe more realistic and play with yours a bit. So that's just an idea for you. I definitely wouldn't recommend going around the whole silhouette or something. I think that would look maybe not the greatest, but hey, maybe it'll look good if you do it. So just again, certain sections, just some of it. You can also do that on your exterior layer, the orange dark red kind of layer. Undo the lock transparency and just go for it on the silhouette of it a bit. And there we have our flame and our sparks. If I was doing this for a art project, I actually think these big sparks look a little bit too big, so I'm just gonna tone them down. And if your sparks aren't in the right place, you can just move them around. That's kind of nice too. Like if we want to move this one, not that, move it maybe to the other side. Something like that. There, I think that looks pretty good. We're gonna call that done. Now for the Litten project here, I thought it would be maybe useful to go over how I actually did the flames in this. It's virtually the same process, but showing you the layers anyway. So I'm gonna turn off all the ones that I have and sort of explain what we got. So it looks like this was my base orange red layer that I began with. Then I did that blur in behind underneath, kind of has that pinky red tinge. Looks like I enhanced it more with a brighter glow behind all of that, in addition to airbrush that in. Then I have the sections that made this have more orange to it instead of just being that solid, almost dark orange red. Some warmer orange varying throughout it, and added some darker red back in, looks like. And then what do we have? We have this one. So we have this, and I added some kind of dots in here, just some extra yellow. So these are the solid yellow sections, and we applied some glow to it as well. You can see the white glow edging that we did in ours, so that is also here in this one. So that is the flame. And then the sparks, I literally did the exact same process, much simpler, with draw the dots, glow behind, yellow in the middle, spread them around, that kind of thing. A little bit random and varying in size. I hope this was helpful for you to learn how to draw flames. So there you have it. I make art tutorials on my channel, so be sure to like and subscribe so you can see more videos of mine and learn more things. You can check out my social medias too. I've got Instagram, I've got Twitter, Discord, and I also have a Twitch channel where I live stream my artwork, so you can always check that out and catch me live, ask me questions there. You can also put your questions and comments, of course, down below in the comments and let me know what you're thinking. And with that, I hope you guys have an awesome day, and I appreciate you watching the video. Take care. Bye, guys.